So for those of you who are tuning into this as a remote broadcast, I'm just going to give you a bit of a primer on how events at UCL FinTech are going to work for this academic year, because we're going to be conducting most of them remotely through the StreamYard platform, which is what you're looking at now. So basically what it does is that it combines live streaming with a recorded video service. And so that if you do watch these events in the future, you can actually post comments in the chat of either our Facebook or our YouTube sites, and we'll actually receive and can see them in real time. And we can actually respond to them and help you with your questions immediately. So if you are watching right now, please feel free to pop any questions you have in the chat, regardless of whether it's in Facebook or on YouTube. And for those who are watching this recorded, good morning, good evening, and good night. We will be starting shortly in about 3 minutes. So do bear with me as I've opened it a bit earlier to just give you this introduction. For those who are watching right now, could you do me a favor and let me know if you can hear me by typing a post in the chat? You can't hear me. All right, hold on. Let me try. Okay, is anyone able to hear me? If you can hear me, could you help me out by posting so in the chat? Yes, thank you. So thank you for posting. So great. I'm just going to repeat what I said because I have a hunch that you weren't able to hear me earlier. So I've started this meeting early to give those who are watching this remotely sort of a primer on how the rest of the events for UCL FinTech are going to work for the rest of this year. Because this is the first time we're conducting these events remotely, we're going to be conducting all of them through the StreamYard platform, which is what you're looking at now. So yes, thank you. So what the StreamYard platform does, and thank you for commenting because I can actually demonstrate this capability, is it allows us to receive comments in real time, and it allows us to display them as they come up. So for example, I can see all of your comments and I can display them on screen like this or like this. So this allows us to interact with you in real time whilst broadcasting on multiple social media channels. And the nice thing about this is that it means that at the same time, we're also able to record these videos in advance and allows you to play them back and watch them back in case you missed anything out. So don't worry if you're missing anything out. You can always come back and watch these videos again later. All's cool? All right. Hold on while I just check. Okay, yes. The sound is working good. Thanks everyone for your help. All right. So now it's 2 o'clock. So I'll just start the show. So welcome to UCL FinTech's first ever event of this academic year. My name is Augustine, and I'm actually the Vice President of Events at UCL FinTech. And so I'll be running through this first session to give you guys an idea of what an introduction to what online banking is like in the UK, as well as traditional banks, how to set them up, what their benefits are, as well as a look at other personal financing apps that could be quite useful for students in your position. And please, at any time, if you do have a question, please feel free to pop in the chat and I'll get back to you as soon as I'm able to. Oh, and the cool thing about StreamYard is you can do this. Okay, so today, let's actually go through over the content that we're going to cover today. We're going to be covering online banks, traditional banks, and personal financing apps, as I've covered just now. So as an international fresher last year, I also found myself stranded in London for 3 weeks without a bank account because, as we all know, the process for registering a bank account in the UK is quite stressful, right? You have to obtain a proof of residence, you have to wait 3 weeks for registering, you have to go to an actual bank counter and actually interact with another person. And of course, that's going to be even harder during COVID. And one of the things that I discovered late last year that I wish I'd discovered earlier is about online banking, about digital bank accounts like Revolut that you could transfer money internationally with good rates and no fees, and which are widely accepted at many European outlets today. Um, and no, we haven't actually been sponsored by any of these, in case you guys are wondering. So this would be like kind of a balanced review of these services. Yes, sorry. All right, so let's go through some of the digital banking apps available, traditional banking alternatives, as well as these financing apps that you would like to make the most of your money in London. And hold on. So the first question we get asked a lot, right? And do tell me if I'm going too fast, because sometimes I can't tell how fast I'm speaking. Yeah, okay. So one of the questions we get asked a lot is whether online banking is safe. And the truth is that I can't guarantee the safety of your money because it's an online bank. But the truth is we don't have to, because the FSCS does that. Basically, it guarantees deposits of up to £85,000, similar to other established banks in the UK. This means that if you're banking with Monzo or Starling, any deposits that you have saved with them are protected in the same way as if you did it at Barclays or HSBC. And this means that if any of the banks decide to suddenly close down, you'd be able to reclaim your deposit back from the government's insurance. So there is an exception to this rule, and that is Revolut, because Revolut is still in the process of applying for a banking license as of September. So they have not yet had the FSCS protection. However, according to their website, they've actually said that they do store their deposits with customers at with partner banks that do have FSCS protection. So to some extent, they can't actually touch or invest the money that you deposit with them because they're not actually a registered bank. And so it's still relatively safe. Another question we get a lot about safety is that how many people actually do use online banks? And the truth is, digital banks are not niche. About 4 in 10 UK residents use online banks. And so they're actually widely accepted at most financial institutions and places. And I actually want to give you guys an example to illustrate this. Because when I flew in from Singapore about 2 weeks ago, I actually didn't have any cell service because my SIM card was a bit faulty. And so I had to travel to my accommodation, and I wasn't able, and I was really worried because I didn't have an online card because I lost my card on the way in, and the only thing that I had was Revolut on my phone. But I was like, can I actually use my phone because I don't actually have cell service? And the truth is, you can. If you do set up your Revolut with Google Chat or with Google Pay or with Apple Pay, you can actually pay for services like a taxi fare or even a subway to your accommodation if you don't have a regular debit card to use. And this happens even without Signal service, because you're able to actually pay for subway services. So it just goes to show like the versatility and the use that you can actually get out of these cards. So 4 of 10 people actually do use these cards. And rest assured, if you do sign up to these banks, you will be able to use them effectively to buy things. The next question we get is that how safe are these banks? And as we talked about earlier with Revolut, they do store them with tier 1 banking partners. So your deposits, if they're not given a banking license, they tend to ring fence client deposits in traditional banks. So they are to some extent protected from the direct digital bank that you're banking with. Also, because they don't have a banking license, they're not actually allowed to invest it in anything. So they're holding it for you. So it is relatively safe. The big caveat to that is that these banks do work from your phone. So if you think about the traditional security architecture of your banking system, right? You usually have like a one-time password on your phone before you're allowed to access anything, and a password. And that's known as two-factor authentication. You have a password, which is like security memory authentication, and then you have your phone, which is like a form of physical authentication. The problem is that with online banks, these two factors of authentication are merged in that you have password safe on your phone and the bank is on your phone. So the security architecture is less sort of like, from an abstract view, robust than your traditional banks. And this also means that, for example, if you're walking through a crowded place, someone could easily nab your phone and get your bank account. The truth is, though, you are able to actually remotely freeze your cards with all these banks, and you're able to instantly manage those banks. And some banks, like as I'll cover later, Starling, do sign up to a code of conduct that makes sure that if your clients, i.e. you, are like hit by these kinds of fraud, they'll actually compensate you for fraud. Something I'll cover later as one of the main benefits of Starling. All right. So without further ado, and do let me know if you guys have any other questions about the safety of these online banks, because remember, I can actually see the comments that you post on these this video, and I can actually respond to them in real time. All right, cool. So let's cover the major online banks in the UK. The three major ones that we'll cover today, which are Revolut, Starling, and Monzo. And the reason why we cover these are because these are the most widely used banks and the fastest growing as well. So let's cover Revolut first. Will I get an online debit card with Revolut? Yes, you will. You will get a virtual debit card with Revolut, and I can actually show that to you right now. So with Revolut, you get an online banking card that you can use when you attach it to your phone. And then you can, if you want, you can also apply for a physical debit card as well. So yes, you can get an online banking card. And you can get that online banking card without paying any fees for the card as well. So you automatically get that. All right, but you basically use it as you would a regular card, just that you would need a payment app like Apple Pay or Google Pay to pay through using the virtual card on your phone. Does that make sense? I hope it makes sense. Let me know if that doesn't make sense. All right, so yes, okay, so let's start with Revolut, right? It's the easiest to use for international students, and that's why we recommend it, because it actually accepts a lot of foreign currencies. And officially, what they do is that they peg the value of the currency to the interbank currency exchange rate plus 0.5%. So this means that you're basically getting a really, really good value for whatever currency you're exchanging. And this is for 30 currencies that they mainly trade in. And then there's an additional 100 other currencies that they also trade in that's tagged at 1% above the interbank exchange rate. So if you are an international student and you're studying here and you need someone to transfer you money into your bank account, this is a very fast, quick, and easy way to do it. And it's also probably cheaper than, unless you have like a secret deal with HSBC or something like that, it's probably cheaper to use a Revolut account to transfer your money in. And it's also probably less fast, because if you do transfer into a regular account, usually you have to justify like where it comes from for like fraud detection. All right. Bank accounts for Revolut also get an IBAN number. So IBAN numbers are for international account transfers. And basically what an IBAN number does is that it allows you to send money from an international bank account into that bank account. And this is one of the main differentiating factors for Revolut as opposed to Monzo or Starling, because Monzo and Starling don't offer IBAN numbers onto your account. Also as well, Revolut does do exchanges free for 24 currencies. So this is 24 of those 30 0.5% currencies. Sorry, yeah. And what that means is that, so it might be a bit confusing because I use very similar terminology, but bank transfers is basically if you are transferring from two bank accounts in the same currency, that currency moving is free. And then currency exchanges are if you're changing money from one currency to another currency. Does that make sense? Hold on, I'm just going to check the chat. All right. Okay, no questions yet. All right. So then the next bit that's also very popular is that you get £200 of free cash withdrawal from ATMs every month, even on the free membership for Revolut. So this means that if you get a physical card, something that I'll cover later, because you do actually have to pay for a physical card unless they give you one for free, you can actually use it to also withdraw cash money. The last thing that's really nice is that Revolut does have a lot of, sort of saying, additions on the site that do help you out as a student. So for example, if you want to manage your spending, or you want to manage like certain, like if you invest in properties and you want to like buy stocks, you can actually do that through Revolut. You can also buy commodities like gold and silver, and cryptocurrencies as well. Of course, equity at risk, like the asterisks, because like, invest at your own risk. But you could technically do that through Revolut if you wanted to. So the drawbacks are drawbacks like any other account. Sorry, I have some questions here before I go on to that. Can we use Revolut to pay for Uber and other services in London? Yes, you can. You should be able to do so. You should be able to do so even without a cell signal, because because Revolut is designed to work on the underground, so you can actually use Revolut on like a Google Pay or an Apple Pay, and use it to pay for like your tube fare as well. So if it works there, it should be able to work for Uber. Also, if you register your card with Uber, like as one of your registered payment services, you can also pay your fare in advance as well. So yes, you can use it to pay for transport services in London. The next question by Phoebe is, if we use Revolut Online Pay, will we be charged extras for it? No, unless it's in a different currency, then the usual currency fees will apply. But otherwise, you use it basically like any other card. There won't be any extra charges for it, unless you are changing currency, in which case it'll be the regular currency transfers. And that's actually a nice point to make, that because let's say that you only have pounds in your account and you accidentally use it to pay euros, right? Usually, if you are using a HSBC traditional student bank account, they would charge you an additional fee for that exchange rate, especially if it's unplanned. But if you use Revolut, they don't actually charge you any additional fees. They automatically convert the currency for you into that native currency, and then you pay in that native currency. And this is true for Monzo as well, because even though Monzo only accepts pounds, it does allow you to make euro payments without any additional charges. Yes, I hope that answers your question, Phoebe. And Prafamesh. I'm sorry if I pronounce your name wrongly. Okay. All right, I'll continue. So yes, okay. So yeah, so we do want to have some caveats to the amazingness of Revolut, which is that they are still in the process of applying for a banking license, as I've mentioned previously. So it's not necessarily provided coverage by FSCS yet. And there's a big asterisk there, because they are in the as far as I remember, they're in the process of applying for it as of September. So once that gets approved, then this probably won't matter anymore. But that's something to note, because these are startups. There is an element of risk because they might foreclose. But Revolut just raised 500 million from a funding round in January, so I don't think they're at risk of foreclosing just yet. But yes, that is something I do have to tell you as a risk. The physical card, if you order it, costs £5, but they do regularly give free give outs of these cards, something I'll show you on the next slide. And also, because they don't have a banking license, they can't give out personal loans yet, something that Starling and Monzo can do. So I just want to show you this picture on the right side of the screen. That's an email I got from them after using the card for 3 months. And basically, they gave me a free card, even though I didn't pay for anything. Oh, thanks, guys. So that just goes to show you that that you don't have, like, I feel bad saying this, but you don't actually have to pay for a card. They will eventually give one to you if you use them long enough, or if you don't use them long enough, as evidenced by this email. So you don't even actually have to have a physical card to use most of the services anyway. Unless you're withdrawing from an ATM, you can use that digital card to make payments online for like freshers events, or like you can use that card to pay for society memberships, or you can use that card on your phone to like scan for groceries at Tesco. So yeah, you don't actually need a physical card. Other cons that we do want to cover is, again, that security element, because it's on your phone. If your phone gets stolen and somehow you had saved that password onto your phone, then you need to log into your computer and remotely freeze your cards, just as a security element. Also, do note that there is a lot of wireless theft in crowded areas in London. Like, people will literally go around with a card scanner and like tap it into pockets and things. So do watch out for that. But that's a security concern for most banks anyway. But we do want to cover that that's a risk that you will also run if you use it on your phone. Before I go on to Starling, are there any particularly outstanding questions? Can you tell me how to set up Revolut for Apple Pay? I don't use an Apple phone, but from what I remember correctly, once you download, I use a Google phone. So I'll go through the process for the Google phone, and hopefully the Apple Pay method will be similar. So basically, it's an app that you download on your phone. Hold on. Yes, it's an app that you download on your phone called Google Pay, right? Okay. And basically what you do is that you add cards onto your phone by pressing this, and then you'll be prompted to select your bank and input the details in. So it's basically like a card wallet. Yeah, I'm not sure how I can help you there, but I'll check with my teammates and see if they have any specific instructions for Apple Pay. But for now, it should be just follow the instructions or Google it if you download Apple Pay. I'm sorry, that's the best I can get at this moment. What are your opinions on Barclays? I'll cover that in a moment once we get to the traditional banking section, if you can be patient with me. Is it okay to set up traditional and online banks for international students? Yes, you can have multiple bank accounts. It's actually something we recommend to have one online bank account and one traditional bank account because because it's like an emergency use case. So, for example, once I got my card, I actually forgot my PIN. So I actually went to Pizza Sophia to pay using my card. It was in excess of £30, so I had to enter my PIN. And at the moment, I realized I fucked up because I'm sorry, I screwed up because I wasn't able to. I couldn't remember my PIN and I couldn't pay for it. So what I did was I transferred the money into my Revolut card and I paid using the Revolut scanner. And that's actually an example of why you could have both. Yeah, Phoebe, I'll cover Barclays in a moment. So basically, we do recommend you having multiple bank accounts because also if like one, for example, doesn't work, then you have a bit of flexibility there. And also like if one card gets stolen, then you have something to have a backup on for a few days. So there's actually lots of scenarios where having two or more bank accounts are useful, and we actually do recommend that people have a dual bank account just for that reason. Okay, thanks. All right. Oh, okay. I have what screen is. Okay, so now I'm gonna move on from Revolut. Oh, and if you do want to use Revolut, this is my sign up link. I'm just gonna keep it here for 5 seconds. But basically, they sometimes do run like sign up promotions if you refer your friends. They don't run anything now, so I'm not actually getting anything from putting this link here. But I just wanted to show you guys that there's also like an additional social element because if your friends do sign up using Revolut, you can actually send payments between them. You can use it to split bills. You can create like savings pots that take like coins, like you know when you spend like $6.99, it'll save that 1 cent and it'll put it in a pot, and then you can use that to save for like trips. I mean, like it's during Corona, so maybe you wouldn't travel that much, but like in future, like the post-Corona trip that we all know is coming. You know what I mean? Okay. Sorry. Hold on. Okay. Yeah, but yeah, if you do want to use Revolut, there's also like an additional social element to it. So let's move on to Starling. So Starling is a bit different from Revolut because it actually styles itself more as like if you want to be a self-employed business owner, you set up a Starling bank account, and you can actually see this in the bank account sizes of Starling, which have like 3 or 4 times as much money stored in its deposits with them because they're usually used for small businesses. Do note that in order to open a Starling personal account, you need a bit more than you would for a Revolut account. So for example, Revolut's accounts you could set up in other countries, but Starling, it is UK specific. So you do need a residence card like your BRP or a valid passport with a visa. And potentially they might email you to ask you for your proof of address. So do note that these are requirements for Starling, and that might like introduce additional hurdles into getting a Starling bank account set up. So the pros compared to Revolut is the first thing is that Starling, because it does have a valid banking license, it can directly issue loans to you. So if you can see that that they have like short-term loans for up to like 36 months in about £5, and you can do that instantly with no repayment penalties. So basically, this means that you can take that loan, and if you pay that loan early, you don't have to pay the interest that they would have missed out on if you set like a longer term date for that loan. So like it allows you to be a bit more flexible with your money, especially if like your loan is like a bit short and you need to like make payments immediately for emergencies. Starling does allow you to take loans. However, do be responsible with your money. I wouldn't recommend taking a loan if you don't have to, but it's something you could do. The other main benefit is that Starling is covered by FSCS protection. FSCS protection. So deposits up to £85,000 are protected under Starling. Basically, that means if Starling decides to fold and you have deposits with them that's less than £85,000 or like up to that amount, the FCA will take that. Sorry, FSCS will take that money and will pay it back to you as like an insurance. So your money is safe. It might take a few weeks to get back to you, but it is insured by the government, is essentially what I'm saying. Okay, there's also another thing that's really interesting about Starling because it's used for small companies. You can also deposit checks on your mobile. And basically how this works is that you, like they do when you register with them, when they take a photo of your BRP, it's the same thing with a check. They literally take a picture of the check and then it deposits into your bank account. Isn't that cool? That's cool, right? That's cool. Okay. It also does automatic bill splitting, and it follows one thing that stands out from the rest of them called CRM, or Contingent Reimbursement Model Code. And what this basically means is what I covered earlier, is that if you are scammed and you're not negligent, you're scamming, like you haven't been like completely fooled, but like they actually fooled you and like a legitimate person might be scammed by them, then they will pay you back what you lost to scammers, which is actually kind of nice if you think about it. So there's an additional layer of security for using Starling Bank. The cons is that because it's UK based, it doesn't support as many currencies as Revolut. Yeah, and that's sad, but it's true. It also requires a proof of address. But so it's a lot more like I'll go into comparisons at the end of this, so don't worry about that. Let me see. Is there anything else I need to cover? No. On a side note, Starling is actually run by Anne Bowden, sorry, which is an ex-investment banker. So she actually does have a lot of experience running this bank. So I would bet on Starling as opposed to Revolut in the long term, personally, as someone who's like following the challenger banks. But I digress. The next bank we want to cover is Monzo. So Monzo usually brands itself as the hip brand. We do want to provide a disclaimer to you all because it's actually appeared in the news recently that Monzo is currently reviewing its financial position because it has difficulty on whether it can continue as a going concern. For those of you who are new to this term, it basically means that they're worried they might go bankrupt. But like bankrupt in like a voluntary arrangement kind of thing, like they don't want to continue the business anymore kind of thing. But it is protected by the FSCS because it's a banking license of amounts up to £85,000. So if you do use it, there's no need to worry that your money is going to vanish overnight. But do note that it might be tied up for proceedings for like 3 weeks or more. But yeah, that's just like a big disclaimer. You can also register with it using your BRP. I'm just going to check if there's any questions. Sorry. Okay, hold on. I will address your question. I'll address your questions now, actually, and then I'll go back to Monzo. Mukund Hari Nafani asks, are Starling's exchange rates percentage above interbank compared to Revolut? Okay, so the issue I have with this is that it depends on what you mean. As far as I understand it, Starling is a UK-based company. They don't take any other currencies, so there's no internal exchange program like Revolut. So you would have to go through a third-party exchanger. That's what I understand. That could be wrong, but that's what I understand. Is that they don't take other currencies. I'm sorry. That's yeah. Okay. Abir asks, is there any way we could have access to this PowerPoint for future reference? Yes, I can share it with you after this is done. I'll just post it in the comment section. All right. Sorry, Mukun. Yeah, Mukun, I'll try my best to find out what whether Starling does have any exchange rates programs, and I'll post it in the comments like after this presentation if I do find anything. But as far as I know, they don't have any other currency supported, so they don't have an internal exchange rate like Revolut does. Okay, so let's go to Monzo. So Monzo's kind of like an in-betweener because one of the main benefits of Monzo is that you can spend in euros from within from Monzo, as in they'll literally your currency is in pounds because it only operates in pounds. But if you spend money in the EU and euros, they will automatically convert and spend that money for you. The other thing is that Monzo, like Starling, also allows you to take short-term loans and repayable without penalty. Again, like Starling, they're also covered by FSCS protection. I do want to point out one point of technical note that FSCS protection here is actually different from the CRM protection that I talked about earlier. Because FSCS protection is about your deposits being protected against the company, and i.e. Monzo. Whereas the CRM is about protection against fraud. Monzo hasn't explicit, as far as I know, as I've searched, Monzo hasn't explicitly stated that it follows the CRM code, which means that if you are like hit by a fraudster, I'm unsure whether you'll be protected in the same way that Starling has. I do know that Revolut also doesn't have this protection as well, but it's just something I do want to mention. The difference between FSCS and CRM protection. Yeah, so it can be used for overseas spending, and it's pegged to Mastercard's exchange rate. So it's not pegged to the interbank plus 0.5. It's pegged to Mastercard's exchange rate because Mastercard does transactions. Yes, Casil. The PowerPoint will be available after the presentation. I'll send the link in the chats after this broadcast is over. Yes. Okay. Yeah. So back to Monzo. Yes. The benefit is that it can be used for overseas spending, and it is pegged to the Mastercard exchange rate. So it's good. The only issue is that it only takes pounds in the current account, so it just automatically converts those pounds when you spend them. Yeah. Okay. Hold on. Okay. Okay. So I do want to talk a bit about the nature of these investment banks because it's tangentially related to what we do at UCL FinTech. So earlier, when I made that disclaimer about its concern, its continuance as a going concern, the reason for it is because if you look at all three of these banks and you look at their financial statements, most of them haven't made a profit. And that might sound shocking to you if you're new to like the world of finance. But to be fair, companies that are massive like Amazon didn't make a profit for 20 years. And I do want to cover the tangential point because it shows like what the startup culture is like. There's actually this thing known as a burn rate, where in the initial phases of expansion, like for example, Amazon expanding its production process, or Revolut or Monzo or Starling gaining new customers, they actually don't turn a profit. Instead, they use the reserves of whatever was of whoever or whatever invested in them, and they burn them off over time. And this is known as the burn rate of startups. And so none of these three digital banks that I've covered today have yet turned a profit, but they do have large investor confidence in that. Like as I've mentioned earlier, Revolut just raised 500 million in investment in January this year. So these companies are valuable and for the most part are still financially sound. So they like it gives you an idea of what the market is like and how like this like it would be amazing if like Revolut was like the next Amazon of banking, but who knows? We'll see. Okay, sorry, I digress. Yes, so we do want to note the drawbacks of Monzo, as shown here, which is that Monzo doesn't have an IBAN number, unlike like Revolut, and it does require UK residence. And the issue is that if you don't have a proof of address of UK residence, there can be a situation where Monzo will literally lock you out and you can't apply for a Monzo anymore, and it gets a bit frustrating. So do make sure that you do have proof of residence on hand when you apply for Monzo. And again, the other shortfall of Monzo is that they only have a current account in GBP. Yeah. All right. So let's compare them, right? Just for your benefit. You guys can read this yourself. I'll just check if there have been any questions recently. All right. Hold on. Okay. And if you want, you can like do like the student thing and like take a photo of it for your use when you eventually decide to get one, because some people probably might only come here in term two. Then you might take a photo and refer to it later for your convenience, or refer to the PowerPoint that will be sent at the end of this presentation. Yeah, but this is kind of like the comparisons between these companies. I do want to note that Revolut is currently the largest at about 20 million users in the UK. For an estimation of size, that's like a third of the population of the UK having a Revolut account. Starling has the largest deposits. Currently, the average deposit size in Starling is of £1,000, whereas Revolut and Monzo currently only average about £300 of a deposit size. But they're all very fast growing. So that's a good sign for these startups. All right, I'm gonna move on from this comparison table. I do want to talk about some other use cases. I think I've mentioned some of these before just now, but these are the use cases that I've actually encountered in the last 2 weeks, which include like making payments without a phone signal, or large payments if you forget your physical card's PIN for your traditional bank, which is something that, trust me, I do all the time. But it's also really useful if you want to do things like cash gifts, because you can actually add people on Revolut and you can directly send them cash. For example, if you want them to book a table at Duck and Waffle, and now because restaurant reservations have introduced like a 10% booking charge, sorry, a £10 booking charge. But if you want to reserve a seat, you need to pay a £10 charge, so that if you cancel, they don't get angry about it. This is because of coronavirus. Then it might make sense to like send them money so they can make their booking. So these are some of the uses of like Revolut and Monzo and Starling. Okay. Any questions for now before I move on to traditional banks? Could you go through the cons of Revolut again, please? Yes. Okay. Okay. So the cons of Revolut is that it doesn't have an FSCS. It doesn't have FSCS protection yet because it doesn't have a banking license. So this means it doesn't have the £85,000 protections that I talked about earlier that the other two banks do have. And as a result of its not having a banking license, it also can't issue loans from its balance sheet because it's not a bank. It can't issue loans legally. Yeah. So those are the main cons. Niraj, those are the main cons of Revolut. And the other security concerns, but those security concerns are shared with the other banks. But the main cons are that it doesn't have a banking license yet, so it can't issue loans, and it's not protected up to £85,000. All right, anyone else have any questions? All right, I'll move on to traditional banks then. Okay, so let's go to traditional banks and the student account benefits. So so this is HSBC. Hold on. Yeah, this is HSBC. So it does, you can set up a HSBC using your UCAS student code as well. So one of the misconceptions we had was that you had to be in the UK to set it up. You can set it up overseas, but it might take some time. But you can use your 16-digit UCAS status code. They also have an overdraft for £3,000. Do note that an overdraft will naturally carry a higher interest rate than a regular loan. And you can receive up to £100 from abroad with no fees, which is, you can see why it's comparatively weaker than, for example, Revolut would be if you want to transfer fees. Yes, okay, hold on. I do have a few other points to add for HSBC. So, okay, yeah. For the sending money abroad charge, £0 to £30 fee for sending money abroad depending on destination. And this is based on like this is based on the fact that if you want to use this to eventually repatriate your money back home, there will be a charge added on that. For example, if you're intending to work in the UK after you graduate. There's also a fee of 2.75% for transaction, or per transaction for overseas transactions, and 2% fee for cash withdrawals overseas. So if you take your HSBC account and you decide to withdraw euros in a euro ATM, in addition to any ATM fees that you might incur, you also have a 2% fee, even if you're withdrawing pounds. Okay. The other thing I do want to cover is that there's no current student incentive when we researched this in September. There might be some student incentives now, but when we did research it, there wasn't any clear incentives to sign up to HSBC for a student account. Okay. The next one we want to cover is Barclays, which someone asked earlier. So Barclays, oh shit, sorry for swearing. So for Barclays, the application form is filled out mostly online, but you do need to go to a branch to verify it at the end of the process. So it ends up being a very similar situation where you do need to be in the UK to apply for it. There are similar fees to send money overseas, and there's an app where you can transfer. Like if you're Singaporean, you know PayNow or PayLah, it works the same way. Ping it allows you to transfer money using phone numbers, so you can use it to split the bill. However, you can see how like that account would be less robust than a Revolut or Monzo account in terms of transferring over money to other people. They do have a student incentive, which is that they have a 12-month subscription to Perlego, which is a student online library. I do want to balance this by saying that UCL has its own online library that allows you access to a lot of the academic resources you will require. So I don't necessarily know how useful this will be for you guys. Yeah. There is a con, which is that there's a £6 fee to send money overseas, and they don't have any overdraft for international students like us. So yay. And then you do require a proof of student status letter to apply for it, which means that you need to get it from UCL, which means that you need to get it from UCL. And then there's a proof of address required to apply for it as well. So there is a lot of difficulty getting this set up from overseas. And similarly to a Revolut, there is a £1.50 fee per transaction. Yeah, okay. Any questions before I go on to Santander? Anna asks, where do you advise we exchange dollars or euros to pounds? It depends on where you're transferring it from. So if you, for example, are transferring it from your parents' account, you might want to ask them first because they might have preferential rates based on their local bank. However, if you don't have that, and you're not receiving it from a student loan, because then you wouldn't need to exchange it from pounds, then I would suggest using Revolut because that's the best exchange rate that I know of, which is 0.5% above the interbank rate. Aren't we allowed to receive student status letter in Portugal? Yes, you are. But the student status letter, okay, number one, I think this is a change that they made this year because of coronavirus. So I might be wrong. But last year when I applied for student status letter, it took me 2 weeks to get it. So you might want to check whether what you received is a student status letter or student approval letter. A student status letter will look very different. Like it would have. I'm not actually no. I'm not entirely sure whether what you've received is a student status letter. But if it is, then you can go ahead and apply for a bank account in the UK. About online banking, how can you put physical cash into Revolut? You can't put physical cash into Revolut. You transfer money in to Revolut. So you would have to put the physical cash into a bank account, either locally in the UK or overseas, and then use your Revolut's IBAN number to transfer the money from overseas or just use your local sort code if you're in the UK. So you can't directly put physical cash into Revolut. Like if you're walking around with like £10,000 and you're using it to pay your school fees, you can't directly put it in. Sorry, for Barclays, can we apply online now? Or do we need to use mobile? Sorry, for Barclays, can we apply online now, or do we need to use the mobile application as I told in the call of the Barclays? Barclays, can we apply online now, or do we need to use the mobile application as told online in the call of Barclays? If Barclays is giving you instructions to utilize the mobile application, then I would say just follow the instruction and advice. Because they might have more up-to-date information on how they want to handle and process student applications. So that advice might be specific. Yeah. My question for the exchange was cash. Hold on. And you asked, where do we exchange dollars or euros? Where do you advise you exchange dollars or euros to pounds? Okay, the truth is that if you do want to exchange cash directly, there are exchanges like Thomas Exchange on TCR. If that your question was about cash directly. However, the issue I have with places like Thomas Exchange on the TCR is that they often give very, very bad rates, and I would if I would I would say that the Revolut rate is probably much better than going there with 300 euros and exchanging it into pounds. It specifically says for bank in the option. Okay, then yeah, you can use that. All right. Phoebe asks, so this means we can't apply for Barclays beforehand. Would it hinder the payment processes the moment we go over? Beforehand, we hinder our payment process before over. Yeah, I'm not entirely sure of the process for Barclays this year because they might have streamlined it due to coronavirus. But usually you would need, in addition to like going to like the branch to verify it at the end, you would also need like a proof of address. And I'm not entirely sure if you can obtain that remotely. Yeah. So Phoebe, for your question, I do think that you would need to be in the UK to apply. Tan Kai says, hi, I'm from SG. How would we go about applying for UK bank accounts? Can we do it locally or must we go over to London to apply? From my experience last year, you do need to be in London to apply for traditional bank accounts. If you're from SG in particular, what's nice is that Revolut does have an SG account, and you can use that to then set up a UK pounds account and transfer money directly from SG to Revolut pounds account. So for Tenkai, and if you're from Singapore, you can do that directly from your SG Revolut account. You don't actually have to. You can set up a bank account in London later. As for setting up a bank account in London, the process for SG for doing it remotely is a bit more tricky because what you would need to do is you need to have a global account, like a global advance account, which requires a HSBC deposit of 30,000 Sing dollars to remotely open an account in the UK. And there's an entire application process for that that takes about a month. So that would be significantly more administratively tricky than just going to the UK and applying for a bank account in the UK. Yeah. So those are your options. Number one, use Revolut and transfer from Singapore to UK. Number two, apply remotely if you have a SG Global Advance account. Or number three, set up a bank in the UK. Yeah, that was my experience. If you do find a different way to apply it, do let me know. Koyun, yeah, would you recommend getting Revolut in the home currency or in pounds? You can get both. You can get a SG currency account, and then you can get a pounds account as well. Like currently, my Revolut has a UK pounds account and a Euro pounds account, and I can transfer money in between them as often as I want. Okay. Mukund asks, is it true that Revolut allows adding money from a card? So if I add money to Revolut via card, will I just be charged the Visa MasterCard rate? I'm not, okay, for cards in a foreign currency. It depends on what the foreign currency is, but as I understand it, yes, you can just directly add to Revolut using a card. What I would recommend you do is you create an account in the foreign currency, and then you receive that money into that foreign currency account from that foreign card. Yeah, I hope that makes sense. And then you transfer within Revolut, because then you could benefit from the Revolut exchange rate. Okay, now I'm going to cover Santander. So Santander is what we recommend to use as the UK online bank, because it's the 2019 winner of the Student Satisfaction Award and can be opened entirely online. The incentive is also really nice because it's a 4-year rail card that has a 33% off on any train journey in the UK, and doesn't have any fees to receive money from abroad. The only problem is that it requires a proof of student status letter and a proof of address. So you do sort of need to be in the UK to get a proof of address to apply for it, unless you had an alternate way of obtaining that. There is a fee to send money internationally, and there is a transaction fee for overseas transactions. You also need a minimum. So when it says payment of £500 into account per academic term, what that means is that you basically need to maintain that in your deposit. So there's like £500 that you can't remove from your account. You need to have that in your account at all times. So it doesn't mean you actually pay them £500 per term. As far as I understand, yeah, that's what we understand. Also, the overdraft limit is lower than you would get for Barclays or HSBC. So the key takeaway we do want to provide is that, as mentioned earlier, we do recommend you to split your money among multiple accounts, just to hedge your risk and to make sure that like you aren't you just so that you do have an emergency use in case you lose your physical debit cards. So that is our key takeaway for today, which is that we do want to split your money among accounts. I do recognize that I'm running a bit close to time, so I'm just going to speed this up for a bit and answer your questions at the end. So let's cover some personal financing apps that we do want to show you. So the first one we want to show you is actually part of Revolut, because what Revolut and to some extent Monzo does as well is that it allows you to set spending budgets and also identify where you're spending from, and allows you to set limits so that if you are spending above a certain amount, it'll warn you that you're nearing your amount or your like monthly budget. It also allows you to save when you spend. So if you spend an amount, it'll round up to the nearest pound, take that money and put it into a pot if you want to. And then that pot can be then used for like if you want to go on a trip or something. So it automatically saves as you spend as a potential feature. There is something known as a savings vault that you can technically open, which has 0.8% annual interest, which isn't a lot, but is relatively comparable in the UK. And that's something you could potentially do if you wanted to, which is just to put your money in a savings vault. Yeah. So there is one caveat to this, which is that it is regulated by the FCA, even if it doesn't have FSCS protection. And so basically what that means is that payment services made by Revolut are sort of, what's the word for it? It's sort of recognizable. It's like it won't be like suddenly stopped for fraudulent activity. It's regulated by the FCA. Okay, hold on. The other one we do want to mention is Cleo, which is nice because you don't actually have to download an app for it. It basically works on your Facebook Messenger, and it shows up like this. And so basically what it does is it does track your spending, and you can attach it to any account, be it traditional banks or online banks. So you can use it for both your Revolut and your HSBC. And this also allows you to track your spending. And it runs on Facebook Messenger, which is nice. And it's free. But you can get a premium version of it as well. I'm sorry, I'm reticent of like the time limit, so I'm just gonna speed up here as well. Yeah, so the issue of Cleo is you do have to put money in it in order to spend through it. So basically it acts as like a medium account as well. So honestly, if I were you, I would just use Revolut and use that as my intermediary account if I wanted to track my money that way. Yeah, there is no FSCS protection, but there is like sort of a semi-promise to protect up to £85,000. But because there's no FSCS protection, it's not legally binding. It's just a promise. I wouldn't recommend taking that at face value because people do be fraudulent sometimes. I'm not saying Cleo is fraudulent. I'm saying it could happen. So we do want to show some of the more advanced ones and what these advanced ones do, and the reason why we can't like directly advertise them to you is because they do put capital at risk. Basically, it means that these advanced ones like Plum and Acorns, number one, it costs money. They have a monthly subscription. But what you do is you put your money in them, and then it automatically invest those in stocks to build your savings. But capital at risk, you know, we are not advertising these. We're just saying they are out there. I do recommend that if you want to look at these later, take a photo and you can like Google them online in your own time because they're actually quite interesting of what they do. But again, capital at risk, they do put your money at risk if you invest in them because you are investing in a financial product. So the first one we're going to go through is Plum. It allows you to track bills and set budgets. And if you pay money, they can also offer automated trading into a stock portfolio that you want, capital at risk. The other one we could suggest you look at is Acorns, which only provide a paid version, but it allows you to also auto invest and plan for your retirement if you want to. Again, capital at risk. We're not advertising these products. We're not recommended by any financial services authority. But if you do want to look at these, you can look at these. You get what I mean? Yes. Okay, don't come running to us if like anything bad happens, capital at risk. But yes, if you want, I strongly suggest these companies. Personally, capital at risk. Okay, so the key takeaway we want for today is to split your money among multiple accounts. I do recommend you have a traditional account and online bank account just for the additional safety lever. And also to be a bit more money wise about your university expenses, find a regulated way of tracking your account so that you know what you're spending in and so that you don't overspend. And that's it. Let's see. Do we have any other questions before I end this stream? I'm sorry, it took quite a while, and I do recognize that some people might have classes after this. So I do want to give you guys some time to ask questions before I cut it off. Yes, I'm going to share the link to the presentation for your reference because that's something I promised earlier. Give me a second. But yeah, do ask any questions that you guys have in the chat, and I'll reply to them. Yes. Okay. So thank you guys for coming. I know that this session is recorded, so even if you can't watch it in real time, it will be recorded for your convenience at a future date. So if you made it to this part of the stream, thank you for coming. Thank you for watching remotely or live in person. And regardless of like the time of day that you are watching it, have a nice morning or afternoon or evening. And do stay safe, wear a mask, and vote. Yes, and thank you for coming. If you are interested in more talks like this, we do cover more career-specific subjects like investment banking, like retail banking, like fintechs, like distributed finance. And if you do want to find out more about these, even algo trading, which is something that we kind of semi-covered at the last part, do sign up for UCL FinTech Society. We do run these events often, and there's actually an event 2 days from now where an associate at Barclays is actually coming to speak about her experiences working at the bank and working in investment banking as a woman of color. So if you do want to sign up if you do want to see more of these events, I do recommend you to sign up to UCL FinTech Society, and so that you can be notified of when these events are occurring. All right. If there are any questions, oh, sorry, there are questions. I'm so sorry, I didn't see this. I was planning to get a Barclays account, but would you recommend me Santander over Barclays? Well, the first thing is I can't recommend you any specific bank account because I'm not a financial advisor. But if I was in a student capacity, I would say Santander's Rail Card is really useful, especially if you're traveling around London. Because 33% off is actually a large amount because if you use the tube, you know that it's £2.50 per trip, which is like really expensive. So if you travel around London a lot, I do recommend getting that 4-year rail card. However, I do also recommend that you do your own research into the banks that you want to do because they do have student offers that open around September that we might not have seen or covered in this presentation. So if you do your own research and make your own decision about it, you'll enjoy your decision. So yeah, that my recommendation is you got this, but also Santander, but you got this. Yeah. All right. Thank you guys so much for coming. And if you do have any questions, please, if you do want to attend more of these events, do follow us on Facebook. Yeah, do follow us on Facebook. We post events regularly. We have one event in 2 days. Do come for that.